Welcome back, everybody. We're back again, Brett and Christa. We are talking about the 4 agreements. This is the third of 4 episodes on the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This week we're talking about the third agreement, but first, let's recap the first 2.
Yes.
So, really briefly, the first one is be impeccable with your word.
Mm-hmm.
So the words we use are very powerful, the words we use about ourselves, about others, and words can refer to thoughts we have about ourselves, right? So don't use your word against yourself or anyone else, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the first agreement. The second agreement is take nothing personally.
Tough one.
Yes, which Brett took it personally when I brought that agreement.
Well, I thought like you're saying I had a problem. And now I realized that was an ish-you, not an ish-me. Can you explain that? Because we forgot to bring that up last episode. That's so good.
We couldn't let that go. We had to come back to that sounds like an ish-you, not an ish-me, which is basically everything that people say is about them. So even if you seem to be saying something about me, it's actually all about you.
So if I have an issue with Christa, it's really
an ish-me.
Ish-me.
And I can't give credit to where I heard that quote.
I'll give it to you.
Well, I feel like I can't take credit for it, but...
That sounds like an issue.
Exactly, see? It can apply to anything.
Yes, it really does.
Right.
And we think all of this applies to really a much more empowered and enjoyable holiday season.
Exactly.
Because as much as we enjoy the holidays and we look forward to it, it is stressful and it can turn out to be a rather should-y holiday season. And so we want to avoid having a shouldy holiday season.
Right.
And embrace these agreements because it really is very empowering. And I like what you said last time, when we don't take things personally, we're much more at ease. And so we truly enjoy life, the holidays, and we enjoy peace and serenity much more than we normally would by embracing these 4 agreements.
Exactly. So this, and again, just to kind of, I don't know if I recapped on the last episode, but I meant to, which is this book, the copy that I have came out in 1997. Don Miguel Ruiz came from a family of healers. He grew up in rural Mexico. And the family thought he would follow in their footsteps to become a healer as well. He did become a doctor and surgeon, and then had a near-death experience, and then came back to some of the wisdom of his ancestors. And so this book is just like wisdom titrated down to the most helpful tidbits, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, when I read about his background, I really don't know what a healer was. And I assumed that, well, there can't be too much here. I mean, from a, quote, healer, what kind of education do you get to become a healer? So I had all sorts of assumptions.
Right, which is a good segue because the third agreement is don't make assumptions.
There you go. You're like
audible sigh.
Me again. Oh, wait, no, that's an issue. Okay.
Right. So we have a tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe they are the truth. And they really feel true a lot of times.
They do. We don't recognize it as an assumption. We see things and we don't understand it as an interpretation or an assumption or a judgment. He talked about that in his first chapter, which we talked about 2 podcasts ago. Yeah. And it just seems that, well, if I feel it, it's real. If I think it, it's credible. It's true.
Yes. Right.
And a lot of times they're assumptions. So we do something in DBT to help illustrate this point. So imagine you have like a circle, and like 2 like slanted diagonal lines, like where eyes would be, and then a horizontal mouth like across. And so we ask people, so what is this a picture of? And people will say, I just did it last night, and people are saying, it's an angry face. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. How many think it's an angry face? And some people did. Someone said, no, I think it's like someone who's in pain. Oh, right. Yeah. Someone in pain. Right.
Wow.
And so we kind of went around and then we realized, you know what it is? It's a circle with 2 diagonal lines and 1 horizontal line.
Oh my gosh.
And we realized that everybody else was injecting their judgments, their assumptions, their interpretations. And in reality, it's just a circle with 2 diagonal lines and a horizontal line.
That is so fascinating because this is what we're all doing all day long, every single day, right? Everything we see, we are projecting our own understandings onto, assumptions probably, right? Right. And really it's through our own perspective, through our own glasses that we're all wearing. Right?
Yep. We make it, again, all about our own frame of reference, all about ourselves.
Right. Exactly. And think about basically all the sadness and drama that is created by our assumptions. So I've shared on the last episode about a conversation I had with someone recently, a friend of mine, where I was confiding in her and so the first thing I did was I took it personally because I thought by the way she was responding or sort of lack of response, she wasn't giving me too many, I guess like verbal, we were on the phone so I couldn't see her face.
Right.
But from her response, I took personally like she's judging me, right? Like I made it about me first. The other thing was I made an assumption that all of that was happening in the first place. What if she had been looking at something or distracted for a moment or tired or right. And so again, I did 2 of the 4 agreements, or I guess I don't know, broke the 4 agreements. No, that doesn't make sense. I basically took it personally, and I also assumed that I knew why she was responding that way. And I didn't. I still don't. I need to talk to her. But it's a real life example of how this happens. And think about too, you might get a text message from someone. And, with text and email, you can't read the tone. And
so true.
Again, you're like, oh my gosh, this is what so-and-so's thinking. This is what so-and-so is trying to convey to me through their email or text or their tone, right?
Yes.
And that's an assumption.
And with the assumption, we draw these, assumption is in essence a conclusion. And it's usually, notice, it can be more often than not, I think, a negative conclusion, some pejorative about this person. What does that do? I mean, that really makes things worse because I'm thinking the worst in you. And what does that do inside of me? So it's not fair to you. It makes me upset. It hurts the relationship. We talk about in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, we talk about a skill called checking the facts. So before we draw that conclusion from our assumption, we check the facts. Like, hey, are you just checking? Are you upset about this with me? Or, we want to check the facts before we draw that assumption, because look at all the unnecessary diminished quality of life that there is.
Exactly. It reminds me of, so the miscommunications that can happen with making assumptions. Have you ever played volleyball?
I love playing volleyball.
Okay. So you know how when you're on your side of the net and the ball's coming over and it's coming so clearly towards one person and everybody thinks...
I know exactly where you're going. Yes.
Everyone on your team assumes that the person that it's flying directly towards is going to get it. Now, from that person's perspective, maybe it seems like it's going a little more towards you, and that person assumes, oh, Brett's got it, right? Well, if no one says anything, it hits the ground so fast, right?
And if it's by you, I'm saying, Christa, why didn't you hit it?
Exactly. And so that's why when you play with a team, one of the things that makes you better is you start to say, got it. Right? Or mine.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. I got this one, or whatever it is. Because you're not assuming everybody knows what's going on.
I like that. And I can still relate playing volleyball because I'd get so frustrated.
Don't you, when it like falls on the ground, but 5 people watched it like fall down?
They just watch like somebody go for it already. And,
somebody. But we're all, again, assuming that someone's getting it.
And yeah. The damage is far beyond volleyball, with just a good trivial example. But, our homes, our families are like teams too.
Yep.
We have, whether we know it or not, we are still functioning in some sort of a team at work.
So true.
And so home environments, work environments are chock full of these assumptions.
Right.
And also the holidays are chock full of assumptions. We've had, sometimes we will have assumptions about a family member for decades and
true.
never know like the truth, what's
the true
behind that. I mean, people might be kind of jerky. And we might not like them, or kind of cold or whatever. Yep. We don't know what's gone on in their lives, even if they're family. People experience trauma. People deal with insecurities. Yep. People have all sorts of stressors, and they deal with it differently. And so I used to say at the end of the podcast in the past, I'd like to keep coming back to and remind myself and the listeners is what we need to pivot from in our assumptions. Our assumptions are, what's wrong with her? And move from what's wrong with her to, I wonder what might have happened to her.
Right.
Now we're moving away from an assumption that we think is true to kind of what we talked about last time, more curiosity that builds compassion towards somebody.
Exactly.
And so maybe we can think about that in reference to our holidays as we're anticipating somebody who just rubs us the wrong way.
Sure.
And maybe kind of ask ourselves, am I considering what might have happened to this person, or am I just being critical and saying, what's wrong with this person? What's their problem?
Right.
Instead of what might have happened to them.
Right. Yep. I was trying to think of how this might come up during the holidays, like with gatherings. So you had talked about coworkers and family. Earlier this week on the team here at the clinic, we were planning our holiday celebration for the team.
Yes.
And there were so many moments where I found myself thinking, I need to clarify who's in charge of this. Because we have a little party planning committee, which is amazing. And we had so many ideas, and we had so many fun ideas. And it was like, okay. But then as the time was dwindling down, it was like, okay, who is actually in charge of each thing? Because if I assume that someone is, and they don't know they are.
Right, yeah.
Right? So if it's, let's say someone brought the idea, let's have, let's order in Italian food or something.
Yes.
And I think, oh, well, it was so-and-so's idea, so I bet they're going to take the lead on that, right?
Yes.
And if I don't ask, it's like, just check. Like you said, check the facts, check your assumptions. So I could see this applying to family gatherings as well, because usually there's one person or family hosting. And so you assume, oh, I bet they're going to have this taken care of. I bet they're going to have that taken care of. I bet they want me to do this. That may all just be a complete misunderstanding, right?
Yes.
You look like you're relating to this.
My. Yeah. Well, and it just leads to poor communication because of the assumption. And we just don't,
it's like the volleyball thing again. Yeah.
We've always done it this way in the past. And so, or another assumption I think we have is that we assume people know how we feel. And we assume people know what we need. And we're very clear in this communication of what we need, because, people say, hey, we'll be over at 5. And I responded really clearly and I went, meaning, that, 5 is too early.
Yep.
And I thought I made it really clear in my, and people don't know what I'm saying, but I'm assuming they know how I feel. I'm assuming they know what I need. And so I'm just going with this.
Go with it.
And I don't even know if this makes sense. This is kind of off the cuff, but I wonder, we've talked a lot about shoulds and the role of shoulds in the first agreement.
Yep.
Be impeccable with your word. Second agreement, don't take things personally. Now, don't make assumptions. And I see the role of shoulds in each of those. And shoulds aren't bad. Shoulds are very appropriate. Sometimes. If I'm really culpable and responsible for something, a should is appropriate.
Sure.
They're just incredibly toxic to oneself in relationships when there's no clear culpability or responsibility. And that's kind of what we're doing. We're shoulding that you should know how I feel when I assume.
Yep.
And so once again, it really leads to a shitty holiday when we are really tied into these assumptions. A lot of times we don't even know what they are.
Yes, exactly. And we can even make assumptions about ourselves, right? Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Like, really, it would be fun to just track. It would probably be very time consuming, but to track the different assumptions that I make in a day, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to know. It'd be pretty sobering.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it would be very interesting because I even think about something as simple as assuming, like let's say I have a meeting with Julia, my office manager, and I'm assuming we're meeting in person.
Yes.
I mean, even something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not. And I just...
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because I see it all the time and it's so tragic. My daughter is hilarious. She always cracks me up.
Okay.
And there's something about like her, like what she says, how she says it.
Okay.
Her delivery and timing. And I've told her, like, you can own the court. Like, you own the court. Like, you can own the room and drive a great conversation. And everybody's laughing. But she doesn't always see herself that way.
Yes.
And I'm like,
totally
no, you're like just absolutely
so funny.
Hilarious. Yeah. Yes. Or like my son, I'm grandfather now, and that's pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
So, and my son is just as even-keeled as he can be, and he just has so much peace and stability about him. So he's not real high, positive emotion, not real low negative emotion. So there's this real stability, and he can assume like, yeah, I need to be more nurturing. And I'm like, dude, your stability, it brings so much.
Yep.
And people rely on that. But it just like, I think as a parent, you see so much great potential and strength and I see that with my clients too.
Sure.
That they don't see, and they just assume, yeah, I'm no good at this, or I don't have this in me.
Yeah.
So I am so glad you brought that up. That's such a powerful statement because I see it in myself.
Yep. Be assuming things about yourself.
Oh my, and and I think inherent within a lot of that is I should be better, or I should be different. It's an excellent point.
Good. Yeah. There was something else I was going to say about that, and now I assumed I would remember. And now...
you really should have.
Oh, I know. We assume people know the positive things we think about. When you were talking about, this is what made me think of it when you were talking about your son and daughter. I was like, I wonder if they know that you feel this way about them.
Oh, they do.
Oh, good. Because I think it's a common, I'll speak for myself. I often think people know that I have, hold them in high regard, or that I really appreciate them. Yes. And I'm assuming that, right?
Yes.
But then I don't say it because I'm like, they know I appreciate them, right? So it's a really good reminder to remember and go out of my way to say hey, thank you. I really appreciate what you did, and here's why, right?
Yeah.
Because I assume. Yep.
I'm so glad you brought that up too. What a great way to go into the holidays.
Yeah.
And just be very intentional about saying, you know what, I really appreciate that you host this every year. Or, we have so many great memories at your place because you host this.
Yes.
Or whatever it is. Mom, Dad, when we grew up, we had this tradition. It's not that our parents are perfect, and some people might struggle with their parents. We can still find something to be appreciative about.
Exactly.
And yeah, you're right. We just assume. Yep. And sometimes what I do is I'll go to people, I'll say, hey, I got to let you know I was talking behind your back. And I was telling so-and-so, how really terrific you are here at the clinic.
Aww.
And but how we do that. We talk positively as well as negatively behind people's backs,
but they don't know.
They don't know. And so why not just go tell them? It's such an empowering thing to do.
Right. Exactly. Yep. So when I'm thinking about kind of the upcoming holidays, I'm thinking of okay, so what are some assumptions that I might be making? One is, first of all, I assume that when the day comes, so when the holidays come and it's time for the family gathering, I assume that I will be healthy and have all the energy that I want.
Oh God, yes.
And even now as I'm saying that, I'm like, the last couple of Christmases I was sick. I had influenza last year, and then the year before I had COVID. And so it's a good reminder, even as I'm saying this, I cannot assume those things because it starts now. Like taking care of myself to stay healthy and strong for getting through the whole holiday season.
Yes.
Like I can't, if I assume that, it's just going to be, you know, danger zone.
Right. And again, closely related to that, when I make that assumption and that doesn't come true, now I'm objecting to reality because it should be differently.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
And so we need to notice that and just kind of take it as it comes and try not to be assumptive about much of anything, really.
Oh, I'll share a good example my family learned last year for Thanksgiving. So last year we assumed everyone was going to be healthy for Thanksgiving. So, and my sister and brother-in-law always host and they do a fantastic job and it's wonderful. And last year for Thanksgiving, they got sick.
Oh.
And they were hosting and we had no backup plan.
Well, yeah.
Because again, we assumed, understandably, we want to assume the best.
Right.
And we didn't have a contingency plan. So this year, I reserved, there's a little like lounge community space at my apartment building.
Nice.
That you just pay like a deposit and then to reserve it or whatever.
Yeah, as long as you don't trash it, you get it back.
But I talked to my family about it because I was like, all right, same plan as last year. Let's have a backup plan. And everybody was like, yes, let's do it. So I reserved it. And did we need it? We did not. We didn't need the backup plan, but it was like, let's not assume that this is all going to go according to plan, right? And just think about how often we do that in life.
Yeah, I get the image like of like just when we assume things, we hold on to it very
like this is
tightly.
the way it's going to go, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, we have to be able to have more kind of open hands towards things, kind of a willing posture, and just be like, yeah, you know, whatever happens.
Exactly. Yep.
So how can we be like more proactively avoiding these shoulds inherent within assumptions, and kind of be less assumptive towards the holidays, towards other people, towards ourselves?
Yep.
Any thoughts concretely what we can do?
Well, okay. So that's a great question because there's an example here in the book that says, let's say you decide to get married and you make the assumption that your partner sees marriage the same way you do. Then you live together and you find out this is not true. This creates a lot of conflict, but you still don't try to clarify your feelings about marriage. So we could substitute anything for the word marriage. We could say you decide to celebrate the holidays and you make assumptions that your family sees the holidays the same way you do.
Yes. Right.
So I think the thing to get clear about is if I'm going to gather with people, let's get clear. What's important to you? What's important to me? Again, have a conversation. What are you most looking forward to? Like, so I could go, my sister and brother-in-law, I assume, are hosting, but again, I don't know. So I can ask them, first of all, you do such a great job hosting. Do you think you'll do the same thing again for Christmas as you did at Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
And I could say, you know, what do you want this to be like? How do you want this to go? How can I help? Right? Instead of just thinking, they'll text me the day before, tell me what to bring, you know?
And notice how empowering that is when you do that, because you're really taking some control over something you have some control over, whereas when we're assuming, we're just kind of giving up control and being more passive, and then we get upset when things don't go our way.
Right.
Where now and it's not that you're being controlling, I think you're being empowering of yourself and for the sake of everybody else. Right,
exactly. So let's say that one of the things that is most important to me, which it's kind of funny, like not a true to life example, but let's say one of my most important things that I want for the holidays is to like have a family photo.
Right.
Which is not true at all because I always forget to take photos at gatherings. But let's say that's my big thing. So if I don't tell that to anybody, but I come to the gathering and I'm trying to get this family photo together and assuming people understand how much this means to me, I'm going to get so mad if I get the brush off.
That's a great example. It really is a good example.
Or similarly, let's say for me, it's all about the food and the meal together. And people are running around and people aren't coming to the table and they're not getting their food and sitting down. They're chatting.
It's getting cold.
And it's getting cold, right? Again, if I don't share that with anybody or talk about what that means to me, I'm going to be so irritated with everybody. And like, don't they see how much this means to me?
Yeah, we assume
people
that they don't care.
that they don't care, and we assume on the front end that they realize how the meaning it has and the impact it has for us, right?
Yeah.
So I would say you were asking for concrete, what should I do? Or what could I do? Since I caught my should, right? What could I do? One thing you could do is just reflect and clarify what is important to me about the holidays. And it's going to be different for everybody. For some people, it's going to be that family gathering. For some people, it's going to be, opening presents. For some people, it's going to be the meal, the photo, whatever it is. Just get clear and then think to yourself, is there a way I could convey this so I don't get my hopes dashed because no one knows what I'm thinking?
I love it.
What do you think about that idea?
I think kind of like what we've talked about before in this area of assumption, don't assume. First, become aware. What is important to me? And then assert. Say what it is.
Yes.
Then and we've talked about this in podcasts in the past. Assert doesn't mean I go and control everybody and say, hey, this is what you need to do. It's just me not controlling anybody but myself and saying, hey, everybody, this is what's important to me this Christmas.
Right.
And you're right, because I think of introverts and extroverts is, I think, a really good example. Extroverts assume everybody's going to be talking together 24/7 over the holidays.
Yes,
and introverts are going to be
quality
assuming,
time. Yes.
Introverts are assuming, no, we're there for a couple hours.
Right.
And then when the introvert isn't, the extroverts assume, what's their problem? Don't they care about family? And the introverts are thinking, well, what's their problem? They're assuming, they don't care that I need time. And
right.
I love what you're saying. Let's just be aware of what's really important and what do I need? Because when we make those assumptions and they're not met, then every year it's the same thing. We just sort of suppress it. We get resentful and then we explode. And every year, and and everybody has this kind of befuddled look, like, oh, I had no idea.
Exactly.
How could you not know?
How could you not know? Exactly. Exactly.
So maybe we can try to assume also the best.
I like that idea too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we can with our assumptions we can be aware, and with our assumptions we can assume the best in people.
Yep.
It just tends to go better for us. There's no scientific empirical study on this that I'm aware of. I do know this, that in general, when we assume the best, that people are doing the best they can, it tends to go better. It really does. When we can assume the best and lead with, we talk a lot about leading with validation, that people are doing the best they can. You know what? It does tend to go better for me and for everybody else around me when I assume the best, that people are doing the best they can.
I love that. So don't make assumptions, if at all possible. If you must, assume the best. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to try to imagine something, you might as well have that slant to it, right?
Why not?
What do you have to lose at that point, right? Right.
And we can really take a lot of the toxic shoulds out of the holidays. And I'm glad we've gone with this, because the holidays, you put this veneer over it, like, oh, it's wonderful. And it's
the most
great.
wonderful time of the year.
Yeah. You could almost sing that. You could sing that right now.
But I won't, because I want to hear the rest of your point.
Okay. I forgot it. No,
the veneer.
We sort of, I think, deny and minimize how stressful it is. And it can be a very should-y experience. It's laden with all sorts of shoulds and expectations. These words that we tell ourselves and about others. We take on things and make everything about ourselves.
Sure.
And like we're talking today, we can go into this with all sorts of assumptions about ourselves, about other people, about the way things should be.
Right.
And so I'm glad I think in a lot of ways, identifying how these shoulds infiltrate and contaminate our holiday season. And so I'm glad we're talking about these three agreements and how to embrace them to avoid a shouldy holiday season. And we're going to talk next time about the last and final agreement.
And you didn't even know, but you alluded to it. Spoiler alert. Preview.
What is it? Do I have to wait?
You have to wait.
Oh, great. I'm going to wait. Going to wait another 5 minutes so we can start it in 5 minutes here.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And again, be sure to go back and listen to the first part as we kind of describe the context for all of this. And again, how to avoid the suffering. So we'll catch you on the next episode. episode.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.